One question I get from a lot of my students that there really isn't a lot of great information out there to solve is how do you play a melodic solo? How do I make my solos more melodic, more lyrical? And I'll show you my 3-step method for doing that. You know, a lot of times with the information out there, we focus a lot on lines, playing fast, arpeggios, all the components and fundamentals that are necessary for playing jazz. But it's a lot harder to figure out, how do you have a great opening line, or what is it about, this Chet Baker phrase that makes it melodic? I'm not going to address necessarily the components that make something melodic or not. What we're going to do, and the first step of this method, is we are just going to find solos and phrases that we already consider melodic, and we're going to steal them. So that's the first step of this process. When we steal that idea, we're going to do some different things with it. So first we got to find a great solo. You have to find a soloist that you think is melodic and take a phrase from that. For this, since we're working on Pentap House in my guitar community, which you can check out the links for all of that in the description below, we're working on this Chet Baker solo, and the first opening phrase is very melodic. So we're going to steal that idea, and then I'll show you what we do with that to come up with our own melodic elements. So the phrase sounds like this. So we take this phrase. Now you don't necessarily have to write it down and transcribe it, but it does help in some ways to visualize it. And when you have that, there's a few different things we could do. We could talk about the rhythm of it and how that's effective, but right now we're just going to talk about the melodic shape of it. This is what a lot of musicians will talk about, shape. We'll get into what they actually mean by that. It's the structure of the line, whether it's where it's starting, does it go up or down, and how quickly it goes up or down. Based on how it does that, that changes the shape. If it falls off really quick, it's a steeper shape. If it's very long descent, we could have that, or it could jump up really quickly. All of that is the shape we're talking about, the shape of a line. Now, this leads us to our second step, which is simplify. When we take the line that we've stolen and we simplify it, what we're doing is reducing all of the embellishments, all of the in-between passing notes to create the most basic reduction of what's going on with the shape. And the way we do that is we want to make sure we capture the high points, like the peaks of the shape, and then also the starting and ending points of the line. There is some art to really reducing it, and you could have some variation here, but if you stick with those two elements, making sure you have the peaks of the line and then the start and end of a descent or an ascent, that will really capture a lot of the reduction. So let's do our reduction for this Chet Baker phrase that I just played. So we start off with that high G, so that's going to be our first note. And then this next line starts on the F sharp, ending on B. So our reduction is, and then for the next part of it, we have the E, D, and we kind of double hit that. Any of the notes that are also hit twice or held for a long period of time, that is going to be an important note that you want to simplify too. So our final reduction for this becomes, I personally like using a lot of half notes for this simplification, really getting it as simple as possible. You could do some quarter notes here and there. That also can work well depending on the kind of line. But if you stick to half notes, that is probably a great first attempt at simplifying the shape, the contour. You retain most of the shape, but we're, taking some resolution away. So after we've simplified it, now we're going to substitute in our own lines and ideas, keeping with those main points, those main contours. And if you do that, then you can really start to be creative while having this hold on something that you already know is melodic. So we already know that this shape gives us a nice melody, and now I can embellish it in different ways, and there's a ton of different ways to do that, and it won't even sound like you're taking it directly from the phrase. It won't sound like the phrase at all, but you'll have this path, this framework that lets you come up with your own melodies. So let's see one option here for another melody using this simplified reduction. This is my substitution for this phrase. So I'm keeping these peaks, I'm keeping with the reduction, the G, and then we go to F sharp, right? So I lead into it in a different way. Instead of starting on the F sharp and descending. Going to the B, going to the E, and then a chromatic note in between, ending on D, in the same way that the other phrase does. So that's our first example here. We steal, simplify, and substitute our own things. Those are the 3 S's. Let's take one more look at his next phrase just to really solidify this idea in your guys' mind. So right after this, he plays a very similar phrase that's a slightly different contour. He goes, our simplification of this would sound like this. And then one way that we might substitute in our own lines and embellishment for this could sound like this. Now that last one I ended a little bit on the A, a little bit of variation from our actual reduction, but you get the point from what we're dealing with. So in that case, we had this E, D, E, C, B. And so I'm using a different pathway. I'm doing A minor to start off, jumping back up to D. This little triplet idea to get down to that low E, because I have to get there pretty fast. The whole time I'm coming up with these ideas, I'm just thinking about the pathway and these big landmarks for our peaks, our contour of the line, the shape. And you could get even simpler here and just think, well, the whole contour here is really just a descending pattern, right? And then a jump up and then descending. And even that might give you some other ideas that you could play off with. Once you start to get comfortable with what different good melodies do, you can really start to come up with your own things and you won't have to think about it as specifically. But if you're new to this and don't really know how to create your own good melody, this is one method that works. Some artists that you might want to check out, Chet Baker is a great one for taking these melodic phrases. A lot of people would say Miles Davis has a lot of great melodic phrases, or find whatever instrument you're playing and think of some guys that you think are melodic for that. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If it has, make sure you subscribe so you can check out my other lessons and join my free guitar community. So I have a lot of free lessons and PDFs associated with these lessons, and I save them all and I have them all accessible to you in my free guitar community. Just make sure you fill out the membership questions. Soon I will be opening up my paid membership where I teach live and I give live feedback and go more in depth on lessons like this. There's a lot more to talk about with that, but we won't get into that right now. Hope you guys have a great day and I'll see you in the next lesson.